Okay. College football playoff rankings. Yeah. I don't think I was much surprised. We talked about this yesterday. I wasn't really surprised at what the committee did. Um, Georgia clearly, obviously, is number one. They didn't flip flop Ohio State and Michigan, which I didn't suspect that they would, even though I think there's an argument for that. TCU is the lone other undefeated team, moved into fourth, which again, I think there's an argument for, although I don't think they're better than a couple of other teams. And the one team that continues to get disrespected is Oregon. You guys know I'm on the Oregon bandwagon. That's fine. Say what you want. You can hate on it. Whatever. It really it does. It's going to play itself out on the football field. I'll be wrong on Oregon if they don't run the table and win the Pac-12. But if they do, they are in. And we could talk about a variety of different scenarios. By the way, I skipped over Tennessee being fifth. They probably should have fallen. To me, they should have fallen to sixth. Again, I would have went Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan, Oregon, TCU, Tennessee. Would have been my top six. LSU with another big win over Alabama puts them at seven. I think their resume says that they're seven. I still think they're overrated. And I think they're going to struggle this week with Arkansas. But that's just me. And USC comes in at eight, Alabama, and then Clemson. I told you guys Clemson shouldn't have been fourth. And if they weren't fourth last week, they'd be out of the top 10. Now, it's interesting. There are two teams that didn't move because they didn't play last week. That's Ole Miss and UCLA. It's going to be very interesting to see if Ole Miss beats Alabama, how far can they jump? Now, UCLA won't jump that much. They're playing a bad Arizona team this week. That if they beat USC the following week, then that is possibly a spot for them to make a big jump. But nonetheless, they've already lost to Oregon, so they won't get to the Pac-12 title game unless Oregon slips up. But I say this about Ole Miss because theoretically, I could see Ole Miss jumping into the top six if you get a couple of things to happen. LSU loses this week. TCU possibly loses this week to Texas. They're if TCU loses, they know that they are out of the college football playoff, right? Tennessee obviously can't afford another loss. Oregon can't afford a loss. LSU definitively can't afford another loss, even if they beat Georgia in the SEC title game. And oh, by the way, we keep thinking about LSU. Don't forget that Ole Miss is in the driver's seat to get to the SEC title game, not LSU. Well, they simply have a better record. I understand LSU is the tiebreaker, but LSU is Alabama fans this week. They need Ole Miss to lose. Ole Miss wins, they're going to the SEC title game against Georgia. So there's that. Now, we talk about all of this, and I want to make one more point before we get to this, a college football playoff expansion conversation that continues to pop up. And look, it's happening. It's just a question of when and if it happens, or when and how big it happens. But look at what's going to work itself out. Again, TCU has a road game this week against Texas. They have a road game against Baylor. My guess is they're probably losing one of those next two games. So that will knock them out. Ohio State and Michigan, they will knock each other out. So Georgia's going to get in, right? Clearly. Winner of Ohio State, Michigan gets in. That's two. And then, as I said, Oregon runs the table, and I think they will. My guess is that's three. Who is four? Well, that's really where the committee has to do some work. Do you want to make it Tennessee? I don't. I genuinely don't. I don't need a Georgia-Tennessee rematch, and you'd have a hard time. And of course, what they will do, because the committee always does this, they'll move Tennessee to number three, so we don't have to have a Georgia-Tennessee rematch in the semifinals, which I don't understand why we don't do that. It's really no big deal. People are still going to watch both semifinals, and they're going to watch a national title game. I don't understand what they're doing. But regardless, Oregon at number three would be interesting to me, just because versus Ohio State and or Michigan. I think they got a shot. But anyway, and that's really it. I mean, LSU has to beat Georgia to get in. Would we get the first two-loss team in? No, I don't think we will. If Tennessee remains undefeated, again, and even TCU, let's say they lose in the Big 12 title game, and that's their only loss to an Oklahoma State or somebody like that who, I think has dropped all the way out of the rankings they have. there may be an argument for them to get in as a one-loss non-conference champ. Tennessee would have an edge. Uh, and again, there's still something left. USC can run the table, and I think they would get in because the SC on the side of the helmet would make a big deal. But here's the point, and this is where I wanted to go with all this, was simply that, you know, I'm not someone who thinks that expanding the college football playoff, it devalues the regular season. No, we just, it does, but it takes you away from, the idea that every game in the regular season matters as much. Like I think it's played differently. I think immediately once you expand, you know what you'll start to see? Those non-conference games that we see, that was the strength of schedule thing. I, I think they could genuinely just go away. Like you don't have to play it. If there is 8 teams getting into playoffs and you're undefeated, you're in. You're in. Because that zero in the loss column means more to the committee than everything. For me, it doesn't. To them, it does. Why would I need to schedule if you only have 4 teams getting in? There are other factors going to be weighted more. If you have 8 teams getting in, I'll take the zero in the L column no matter what. They're not going to leave you out. They're not going to leave you out. As soon as they do that, I would immediately stop playing tough non-conference schedules. There's no reason for teams to, because that's what's going to matter more than anything. Because guess what? Eventually, as we see every single year, how this stuff works out is generally that the situations take care of itself. Well, there are 6 undefeated teams or 7 undefeated teams 2 weeks ago. Guess what has happened? Okay, now they're down to 4. And guess what? They're going to be down to 2 max when it's all said and done. 3 max if TCU can hang on. So, I mean, why sacrifice the zero in the L column when you don't need to? Because 8 teams are expanding. You're going to get in. If you have a zero in the loss column, you're going to get in. Doesn't matter what your strength of schedule is. So, one more reason I'm not in favor of expansion, but, again, I'm on the wrong side of it. And 12 teams are actually absolutely ridiculous. A 12-team committee, dear Lord. I would be scheduling Kent State and everybody else, right off the bat. I mean, it genuinely does. To me, 12 teams just, it's a waste. It's an absolute waste of time. All right, we have to get to shovels of wisdom here. But first, a word from our friends over at Locked On Falcons. My buddy Aaron Freeman's got you locked on for everything Atlanta Falcons as they get set to take on the Carolina Panthers. We appreciate you making Locked On Falcons one of your first listens of the day. Make your next listen the Locked On Sports Today podcast. It's the biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day. It's available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts.